Imagine waking up at 5 in the morning every single day for 9 years.
Oh, man. That is a lot of early mornings.
Right. You're putting in this agonizing work, pushing your body to its absolute limits, sacrificing your social life, and then you lose to your biggest rival over and over again.
Yeah, that's just brutal.
It is. Now imagine the sheer weight of that history on your shoulders as you line up for year 10. And then, imagine finally snapping that streak. Because that is exactly what the Oxford women's rowing team did to Cambridge in week 15 of 2026.
It's just the ultimate sports catharsis, honestly. I mean, when you look at a streak that long, you aren't just fighting the current team across the water.
Absolutely not. You're fighting like ghosts.
Exactly. You are fighting this psychological ceiling that has hovered over the entire program for nearly a decade. So breaking that isn't just a win, it's this instant liberation for a whole generation of athletes.
It really is the ultimate real-world version of finally beating that final boss in a video game. You spend years getting crushed, learning every pattern, until you get that one perfect run where everything just clicks.
Right.
But here's the thing. That Oxford upset, it wasn't an isolated fluke. It was basically the starting gun for a week where the fundamental rules of global sports were just completely rewritten.
Yeah, a wild week.
It really was. So today, we are doing a deep dive into our Week 15 Women's Sports Weekly Summary for 2026. And our mission today is to unpack this landscape that is suddenly defined by massive disruption, surprising streaks of dominance, and some incredibly heavy boardroom revolutions.
Revolutions involving, the money, safety, and the actual identity of these athletes.
Exactly.
And for you listening, analyzing this specific week is sort of the ultimate shortcut to understanding the modern business and culture of sports.
Yeah, it really paints the whole picture.
It does. By looking at these events, you'll see why the old paradigms are breaking down, why nobody at the top is safe anymore, and how the athletes themselves are, fundamentally changing the actual machinery of the game.
So let's start by unpacking that whole theme of disruption. We just talked about Oxford breaking a 9-year losing streak, but that spirit of chaos, it seemed to infect almost every major sport across the globe in week 15.
It really did.
I was looking at the soccer data, and the momentum is shifting in ways that feel completely unprecedented. Down in Australia's A-League women, the teams stuck in the middle of the standings.
Teams that are traditionally just punching bags for the elite clubs, right?
Exactly. Those teams are suddenly pulling off surprise draws. They are turning fixtures into these goal-heavy attacking clinics and basically forcing the title contenders to lose crucial championship points.
And we observed a very similar phenomenon in the United States with the NWSL.
Oh, really?
Yes, several underdog teams grabbed crucial points against heavy favorites. And when you look closely at the source data, you see it's not a statistical anomaly or just blind luck.
Okay, so what is driving it?
It's being driven by emerging forwards and substitute goalkeepers who are just stepping onto the pitch and playing flawlessly. It highlights this rapidly growing depth across the entire league ecosystem.
Wow. And that depth, it seems to be bleeding over into individual sports, too, like tennis.
Well, tennis is a great example right now.
Right, because you would typically think an established, top-seeded star would easily dismantle a younger, lower-ranked player in an early tournament round.
Sure.
But looking at the WTA Tour, the mid-tier tournaments this week were an absolute bloodbath for the favorites. I mean, several seeded players were forced into highly unexpected early exits by these younger athletes.
And this is where we have to look at the actual physical mechanics of the sport right now.
Okay.
Because established stars in tennis are currently suffering from intense scheduling fatigue. I mean, the global season is grueling.
Oh, I can only imagine. The travel alone.
Yeah, you're traveling across time zones, constantly switching surfaces from hard court to clay to grass, and you're playing a high volume of matches just to maintain your ranking points.
Right.
So the younger players coming up, they realize something critical. They don't necessarily have to outskill the veterans with, brilliant shot making.
Wait, they don't?
No, they just have to outrun them. They are utilizing incredibly aggressive baseline play, basically just returning balls with power until the veterans' exhausted legs give out.
Wow.
Yeah, they are ruthlessly capitalizing on that fatigue.
That is just wow. And it's happening everywhere. I mean, we're seeing underdog national teams in women's baseball pushing traditional legacy powerhouses to the absolute brink in international qualifiers.
Yep.
And even the build-up to the Volleyball Nations League is already being defined by roster depth and rotation flexibility rather than teams just relying on one or two superstar players to carry them.
Which really points to a global leveling of the playing field. The margin for error for a top-ranked team or, a number one seed is shrinking to almost zero.
But I'm looking at this data and it feels completely counterintuitive. Well, historically, the team with the most money, the longest legacy, and the best facilities wins. That's just how it goes.
Right.
So how are these underdog mid-tier teams suddenly matching the elite? Did the global talent pool just magically double overnight?
No, the talent pool didn't double, but access to information did.
Ah.
What we are seeing is the democratization of sports science and tactical knowledge. 10 years ago, a few dominant programs basically hoarded all the best coaching, the elite recovery protocols, the cutting-edge data analytics.
Right, the big budgets get the big toys.
Exactly. But today, a mid-tier NWSL team, or say a 50th-ranked tennis player, has access to biometric tracking, advanced scouting algorithms, and tactical blueprints that only the top 1% possessed a decade ago.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they're stepping onto the professional stage physically and tactically prepared to dismantle the old guard simply because the knowledge gap is essentially closed.
That is fascinating. So it's like the so-called interns finally have the exact same tools as the executives,
Yeah.
and they're using them to completely disrupt the corporate ladder.
Exactly. Nobody is safe.
If you slip up or if your legs are just tired from a grueling travel schedule, that 19-year-old baseline aggressive player is right there to take your spot. I mean, that makes for incredibly compelling television.
It really does. However, if we look a little closer at the week's events, this narrative of constant chaos and, democratized parity, it gets very complicated very quickly.
Wait, hold on. You're saying democratized data and youth are leveling the playing field globally. But if I look at the NCAA division, women's basketball tournament from this exact same week, the exact opposite is happening.
It is.
We expect March to be all about the Cinderellas and the bubble teams shaking up the projections. But the hidden story from Week 15 is that there is almost zero chaos at the top of the bracket. Aside from one major upset where Virginia defeated Iowa, the tournament followed a highly unusual trend of predictability. The elite teams are actually becoming more dominant. Doesn't your democratized resources theory completely fall apart there?
I mean, it seems like a contradiction, I'll give you that. But it actually comes down to how different sports ecosystems are structured.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Parity is rising rapidly, where professional leagues are actively expanding their depth across the board, like we see in global soccer. But NCAA basketball isn't structured like professional soccer.
Right.
It acts much more like a gravity well.
A gravity well. How do you mean?
So the top 5 or 10 college programs, they've built these massive self-sustaining brands over decades. They have unparalleled television exposure and incredibly deep alumni networks.
Yeah, okay. I see where you're going with this.
So while there's a massive youth surge happening in the sport, I mean, freshmen and sophomores are absolutely dominating the individual scoring charts this season.
Right. They're everywhere.
But that youth isn't spreading out to level the playing field. The best freshmen are all flocking to the exact same elite top-tier schools.
Wow. So the talent just clumps together at the center.
Exactly. Making those elite programs heavier, denser, and incredibly hard to move. The youth movement is happening inside the dynasties, which makes them even more unbeatable.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The rich are essentially building a fortified compound.
Yep.
And we see that same type of entrenched dominance in water polo, right? Because the 2026 Women's European Water Polo Championship just wrapped up this week, and the Netherlands secured yet another title.
Which proves that their tactical discipline is simply unmatched in Europe right now.
Yeah.
In water polo, tactical discipline means suffocating defense, minimizing unforced errors, and executing set plays with just mechanical precision. They aren't leaving any oxygen in the pool for an underdog story to breathe.
And then you have alpine skiing, which presents another layer to this counter-trend.
Oh, absolutely.
Mikaela Shiffrin maintained her elite consistency, securing another overall World Cup title, and tying historic records. And we are talking about a sport that is currently dealing with a severe injury crisis.
Right, which is huge.
Yeah, multiple top athletes have been sidelined, which theoretically creates unexpected podium opportunities for newcomers, yet Shiffrin remains completely untouchable.
Yeah, she does.
Meanwhile, you have Federica Brignone delivering this powerful comeback story, returning strong from her own injury setbacks to remain highly competitive.
It's a remarkable juxtaposition for you listening to consider. Because in individual sports where physical exhaustion levels the field, like tennis, you see absolute chaos.
Right.
But in the case of once-in-a-generation individual brilliance, like Mikaela Shiffrin, you aren't dealing with a normal human baseline. You're dealing with a historical anomaly.
Yeah, she's just on another level entirely.
Exactly. Her foundation of technical excellence is so deeply entrenched that even an injury crisis across the entire sport doesn't shake her position. The giants in these specific scenarios are actually tightening their grip.
So we have this incredible tension. The underdogs are taking over soccer and tennis, while the legacy dynasties are surviving and thriving in college basketball and water polo.
Right.
But none of this action happens in a vacuum. To really understand the forces driving the games we watched in Week 15, we have to look away from the scoreboard entirely and, step into the boardrooms.
Because the product you see on the field or on the court is entirely dependent on the off-field infrastructure governing it.
Absolutely.
And Week 15 saw some seismic shifts in that infrastructure.
Let's start with the financial side. During the NCAA Final Four weekend, WNBA players officially celebrated a brand new collective bargaining agreement.
Yes.
And looking at the source material, this isn't just a minor tweak to their healthcare forms. We are talking about significantly higher base salaries, actual revenue sharing, and comprehensive benefits. It's flagged as one of the most critical financial shifts in the history of women's sports.
Oh, without a doubt. Revenue sharing is basically the holy grail of professional sports leagues.
Why is that?
Because it fundamentally changes the relationship between the athlete and the organization. They are no longer just salaried employees performing a task. They are actual stakeholders in the growth of the business.
Okay, let me see if I have this straight. When players get a slice of the overall revenue, so the television deals, the merchandise sales, the ticket surges, it creates a financial flywheel, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to go play in secondary leagues overseas during their off-season just to pay their mortgages.
Precisely. And that's huge, because for decades, female basketball players essentially played year-round.
Which has to be exhausting.
It takes a devastating toll on knees, ankles, and overall cardiovascular health. But with a CBA that guarantees financial stability, they can finally afford to rest, recover, and train properly during the offseason.
Which directly prevents the exact type of scheduling fatigue we just saw, causing absolute chaos and upsets over in tennis. Wow. Rested players mean fewer injuries and higher quality basketball next season. Higher quality games mean more television viewers, which means more revenue to share. It's a complete cycle.
And that cycle elevates the entire standard of the sport. But while we celebrate that financial maturation in one league, Week 15 also forced the sports world to confront the deeply uneven development of global athletics.
Yeah, we have to talk about this.
Our sources highlighted a major systemic abuse scandal that was exposed in Czech women's football.
That report is incredibly sobering. It's a stark reminder of the realities that often get buried underneath the highlights and championship confetti.
It really is.
It underscores a severe lack of global protections and institutional accountability.
It highlights a completely fractured landscape.
Yeah.
Because in one part of the world, you have highly mature, unionized leagues negotiating these complex revenue-sharing models.
Right.
But in another part of the world, you have deeply entrenched toxic power dynamics that leave athletes incredibly vulnerable. The demand for universal safety standards, independent reporting mechanisms, and just basic human rights in sports is becoming just as critical to the future of the industry as the demand for equal pay.
It all comes down to who is writing the rules of participation and how those rules actually protect the athletes.
Exactly.
And speaking of the rules of participation, Week 15 also brought us a prominent policy debate. Megan Rapinoe criticized the new eligibility policies issued by the International Olympic Committee, the IOC.
Yes, that made a lot of headlines.
It did. And it sparked a highly complex debate centered entirely on the balance between competitive fairness and athletic inclusion. And as we look at this for you listening, I want to be really clear.
Yeah.
Our goal today isn't to weigh in or take a political stance on the issue. We're not picking a side here.
Not at all.
Our focus is strictly on the source material. And what those sources tell us is that these boardroom debates are fundamentally rewriting the foundational rulebook for the future of the sport.
That is the crucial takeaway right there. Because the IOC's policies dictate the absolute pinnacle of global athletic competition.
Right.
How they define eligibility doesn't just affect the Olympics. It cascades down to national federations, collegiate levels, and eventually even grassroots programs.
So it touches everything.
It touches everything. The athletes involved in these debates are no longer just playing the game. They are actively shaping how the game exists as a cultural and legal institution.
So looking at this massive puzzle, the WNBA financial flywheel, the urgent demands for basic safety in the Czech Republic, and the complex IOC eligibility debates, how do these off-field shifts directly change what a fan actually sees when they buy a ticket or turn on their television?
Well, what you are watching on the field is basically the visible symptom of an invisible structural evolution.
Okay, I like that.
When athletes secure a strong CBA, you see faster, stronger, more tactically brilliant play because the athletes are finally resourced like true professionals.
Right.
When athletes expose systemic abuse, you are watching a painful but necessary teardown of corrupt systems, which eventually clears the way for healthier, more sustainable leagues that can actually retain talent safely.
Absolutely.
And the policy debates happening at the IOC will literally determine who is standing on the starting blocks in the years to come. Women's sports is maturing rapidly as a global industry, and these intense boardroom battles are just the necessary growing pains of that maturation.
It is a massive, totally interconnected ecosystem, which honestly brings us to the perfect way to tie all of these threads together.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, our sources noted that Week 15 coincided with Women in Sport Week 2026.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which amplified visibility across the globe with a specific campaign called Same Energy. The goal was to emphasize bringing the exact same energy, funding, and passion to grassroots sports as we do to the elite professional levels.
Which is an incredibly fitting theme given everything we have unraveled today.
It really is. I mean, this week perfectly encapsulated that same energy from top to bottom. It was a total collision of forces.
Yeah, it was.
We had the psychological release of Oxford breaking a 9-year losing streak in rowing. We had democratized data empowering young, aggressive tennis players and mid-table soccer teams to take down giants.
Right, the interns taking over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we had Mikaela Shiffrin and elite NCAA basketball programs proving that gravity wells of talent and dynasties can still hold strong against the youth surge.
Yep.
And underlying every single serve, goal, and basket, we witnessed a structural revolution in the boardrooms fighting for money, safety, and the right to compete.
And for you listening, this deep dive isn't just about catching up on sports trivia for your next meeting.
No, not at all.
You are watching a massive global industry evolve in real time. The shifts we analyzed in Week 15, the democratization of technology leading to parity, the consolidation of brand power at top universities, the demand for equity and safety in the workplace.
Yeah.
These are direct reflections of broader cultural and business trends happening everywhere right now. Understanding how a sport handles disruption basically gives you a masterclass in how any modern industry handles disruption.
It's so true. Let's bring it all back to where we started. We open with that visceral image of a 9-year streak finally breaking the underdog, waking up at 5 a.m. and finally toppling the giant.
Yeah.
But as we have explored today, the landscape governing those upsets is incredibly complex. So here's a final thought I want to leave you with, something to mull over on your own as you watch the games this weekend.
Let's hear it.
Considering the growing financial power in sports like the WNBA, alongside that unshakable gravity well dominance we saw in NCAA basketball, as more and more money pours into women's sports globally, will that wealth democratize the field to create more parity and thrilling Cinderella upsets? Or will it just allow the richest, most dominant dynasties to build moats so wide that they become truly unbeatable?